keynote speaker is former Winnipegger, I guess always Winnipegger if you're here for once, Dr. Jawad Shah. Dr. Jawad Shah is a neurosurgeon and the founder of Insight. He grew up in Winnipeg and was a pillar of the community through his youth and inner city daawa work. Many brothers and sisters, including myself and many of my friends, are indebted to Dr. Jawad Shah for his intellectual and Islamic development, both in Canada and the United States. He is a known speaker with MYNA, MSA, ISNA, and several other Muslim organizations in North America, as well as many of these ones that he founded and continues to support. Now, I could go on and on based on all the stories that I've heard from Sheikh Ismail or other members of the community about how much we love Dr. Jawad Shah, but I'll let him come up and offer a speech discussing the history of Manitoba and the Manitoba Muslim magazine. So please give a warm welcome to Dr. Jawad Shah.
الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. So it's really nice to be back in Winnipeg, and I've actually, last time I was here was 2003. So Sheikh Ismail, who I love so much, said, come on back. So I said, he's going to invite me in July. Maybe June, maybe in January. I think it's a little bit of there's a little bit of a message in there that I better get back a little bit more often. So I really do very much want to address the editorial board, the board and the leadership of this masjid, and this wonderful city and this wonderful country. Wherever I've gone, I've always represented myself as a Winnipegger. I grew up here. I went to elementary school, I went to junior high school, I did university, I did my medical school, I did my residency. So I'm a Winnipegger through and through. It's a wonderful country. There's so much diversity, bringing people together from every background, every language, and to build something beautiful. And even in the US, I think there's a lot to learn from the Canadian experience, except for the tax stuff. Taxes, I think we wouldn't go overboard. But alhamdulillah, it's wonderful to see everyone. And I was thinking to myself, what am I going to say that perhaps can touch on a few elements of this community and the wider Canadian community. And it's a saying of Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, where he says, وَالَّذِي نَفْسُ مُحَمَّدْ بِيَدِهِ, that إِنَّ مَثَلَ الْمُؤْمِنِ كَمَثَلِ النَّحْلَةِ أَكَلَ الطَّيِّبَ وَوَضَعَ الطَّيِّبَ وَوَقَعَتْ فَلَمْ تَكْسِرْ وَلَمْ تُفْسِدْ. Very beautiful. The statement says that I swear by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who has the soul of the Prophet Muhammad in his hands. So very profound quote, saying this is what I'm about to say is profoundly true. That the example of a believing individual, someone who has that African belief, that the example of that person is like that of a bee. The bee eats beautiful, what it leaves is beautiful, and wherever it lands, it doesn't break something and it doesn't destroy. So when I think of this, there's so many lessons in it, I think, for us as a community. The verse, it starts, the analogy starts with that of a bee. That's the nature of a beautiful community. A beautiful community is like the humming of the bees, and bees are incredible creatures. If you look at the bee, the human race will not survive more than 4 years if you take the bees out of the equation. In 2017, Earthwatch described the bee as the most important creature on Earth in terms of sustaining life. They pollinate, they grow, they feed, they do all those beautiful things. And this is beautiful hum that you hear whenever you see the bees. You don't think about the excrement, you don't think about anything negative about a bee. The only thing you attack a bee, they're going to attack you back. If you're polite and nice, accidentally in the hive, they're not going to come after you. So the statement of our Prophet says that one of the things the bee does is that it eats beautiful. It eats things that are beautiful. It eats healthy food. It eats pollen. You know, the majority of what bees eat isn't honey. They eat pollen, they take in pollen. They only use honey, the majority of bees, when there's no other thing available. They produce it. A bee will live approximately 40 days, and it'll produce 1 tablespoon of honey. And it'll travel 1,000 times, 1,000 miles. It'll travel for 1 little spoon of honey that we're going to eat in 2 seconds. This is the nature of a bee. And so it eats the most beautiful thing. And then, what does it leave? وَضَعَ طَيِّبًا. That it leaves something that's beautiful. There is nothing more beautiful in terms of a creation of an insect, I think, than honey. It produces glucosamine, which is an enzyme that's in honey. It's nothing else. It's protective to your brain. It protects your brain from neurotoxicity and strokes. It's an incredible enzyme. It's only in honey. If you look, even in Canada, if you look at the expiration date of honey, the majority of honey has no expiration date. You can leave honey out and it's not going to spoil, it's not going to rot. It's an incredible substance that's being created. There's so much beauty in what the bee produces, and it doesn't produce only honey. When a bee touches something, when it goes to the flower and touches it, the pollen comes on its body, and it goes to the next flower and it pollinates. And you see this pollination process essential for life. This is the nature of a bee. That it's always, in whatever it's doing, it's beautiful. And then, so beautiful, that when it lands on something, when it lands on something, if it's a flower, and the flower starts to bend, because the bee is big and the flower is small, what does it do? It gets up and it flies away. It doesn't destroy anything, doesn't hurt anything, doesn't harm anything. That's the nature of the bee, quietly doing its work, humming and doing it. I think the Muslim community is that bee, that type of bees. And I see that now with Sheikh Ismail, I see it with this magazine. I think quietly, as the community continues to grow and thrive in this wonderful country, that it is that little humming of the bee that goes out there and does the good things and tries and helps in whatever it possibly can do. This is the nature of the bee. There's a poem that my family is, I think, the owners of, and I think many Pakistanis you may have heard the poem. But it says, "Tuti baat mukhalif se naam ba alqa, ye to jaldi hai tajribu chawla." It's a poem in Urdu that's ascribed to Iqbal, but it was written by my grandfather, and it's on my mother's grave. And it says that the statement is that don't be afflicted by the oncoming tempestuous winds, O eagle. Speaking to human beings, especially youth, as if you're eagles, far-sighted, ready to work, plant your feet down, do what you have to do. You don't need the pleasures and the softness of life, but to look forward. And the idea that we're eagles, that don't be afflicted by the oncoming tempestuous winds, O eagle. These fly in your face only to make you go higher and higher, to achieve more. So the challenges of life. What is our interaction with our community, and what is our interaction with each other, and what is that element of beehood that should be inside of us? People say that societies, and particularly coming now, living in America and seeing the differences between the countries, that people think that you're going to solve the problem in a country, in a continent, in this world, with all the conflicts that we see. You're going to solve it by justice. And I'll tell you, brothers and sisters, justice will never work. There's no solution to any problem, any difficult problem. If there's a minor problem, yeah, perhaps justice works. But in the majority of issues, justice does not work. Applying and trying to apply justice, I'm telling you, does not work. But what does work is something far more profound that Quran talks about. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَأْمُرُكُمْ بِالْعَدْلِ وَالْإِحْسَانِ. Allah, He asks you to do ihsan. He doesn't ask you to be simply people that try and solve everything by justice. It doesn't happen. فأمسكوهن بمعروف وتسريح بالإحسان. Even in the matters of divorce, don't look just at issues of justice. He deserves this, she deserves that, this is my right, that's her right, this is the right of this person and that person. That's what you do when you're in a court of law. That's for a mathematician, that's for a lawyer. That doesn't solve any problem. There's still hatred and anger in the heart. But what solves problems in the spirit is ihsan. It's excellence. And the idea now that you solve issues by being that muhsin, the person who can take a hit and still be patient. A person who's afflicted by problems and you still are happy with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That you can be someone who's insulted by someone but still smile on that person's face and feel that love in your heart. Our Quran and our Deen, it doesn't teach us to hate, it teaches us to love. And I can give you evidence from the Quran about that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, عسى الله أن يجعل بينكم وبين الذين عاديتم منهم مودة والله قدير. Not only your friend, not only your family and relatives and community, but your enemies, that perhaps one day عسى الله أن يجعل بينكم, that He will make between you and them the people who have the most animosity towards you. بينكم وبين الذين عاديتم منهم مودة. He'll put love in your hearts for each other. How is that possible? He ends by saying, Wallahu qadir. Allah is capable of doing that. So brothers and sisters, this is the nature of what the Bihud is. And I recall fondly the story of the nature of the companions and how they lived and what their life was like. The Prophet described the Sahaba like they were bees, reciting Quran at the night and everyone hearing the beautiful verses and all the intonations and so on in the night of Medina. Can you imagine that night? There's no sounds, there's no street lights, maybe there's some firebugs, and people are quiet. And then inside all of the houses, you're hearing the beautiful recitation of the Quran, the beautiful hum of the Quran. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He created this type of community that we're trying to emulate. There's the story of Mu'adh ibn Jabal, radiallahu anhu. And his story to the day of Al-Aqaba, when he was a teenager and invited Rasulullah to Medina. That was a beautiful time. And he grew up, and it was in his 20s when he was sent to Yemen. So in his mid-20s, he was sent to Yemen now on the back of a horse to now deliver the message. And in his mid-20s, he was told that go there and do what you have to do. When he set up a system of simply zakat, how do you enjoin charity in a structured manner where money comes in and distributed to the poor, that within 3 years of implementation, there was no one ready to take zakat. In other words, he collected it to the point and distributed to the point that poverty was erased. Again, he was in his 20s. I recall the story when he went from Masjid al-Nabawi to Masjid al-Quba. And when he went, he walked alone with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam for around 5 or 6 miles. Just imagine that time. And forget about what he said. Imagine that feeling. All the Sahaba were told, don't come with us. 2 people walked, Mu'adh ibn Jabal and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And as he walked on that path and came now to the far precincts of Medina and in the desert, and as they were now getting ready to part, our Prophet said to him, "Asa an la tulqani ba'da 'ami hada." Ya Mu'adh, I'm telling you that you're probably not going to see me again after this. So he was pretending his own death is now coming. Mu'adh in his 20s, who lived his life with his Prophet, is now feeling that. And he says to him, فَلَعَلَّكَ تَمُرُّ بِمَسْجِدِي وَقَبْرِي. That one day when you come back, why don't you come and visit my grave and visit my masjid? So Mu'adh ibn Jabal radiallahu anhu, he goes off into the desert, and he goes off far off to Yemen, and you see the stories in Kitab al-Anwar, how much he did to uplift people and change the situation of poverty. The UN, as I said in 2015, they said that if all of Muslim charitable giving was quantified, simply from zakah, not sadaqah, it was over $150 billion in a single year. The rest of the world combined for humanitarian aid donated $20 billion that month. 150 billion of what's quantifiable, not the food, not the clothing. The UN said that if the Muslim world put this to work the way their own religion says, in the distribution of this wealth, that all world poverty would end by just simply this act. Brothers and sisters, there's so much that we have to give. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I ask Him to continue to make us to grow. There is a dua of our Prophet that he used to say in the Hajj, and I love this dua. He says, Allahumma anta ahaqqu man ubid. That, oh Allah, you are the only one worthy of worshiping, Ya Allah. Allahumma anta ahaqqu man ubid. Wa ahaqqu man dhukr. The only one worthy of, the only one that we should be remembering. Allahumma anta ahaqqu man dhukr. Wa ahaqqu man a'ta. And you're the only one who gives. Wa ajwadu man su'il. You're the most generous one who he's asked. Wa ajwadu man su'il. Wa arfa'u man malik. Anta al-malik la sharika lak. Wal fadlu la tuhlak. كل شيء هادف إلا وجهك لن تطاع إلا بإذنك. He comes to this dua in Hajj. It's mentioned that he says this statement that I want you to feel in your hearts. He says, لن تطاع إلا بإذنك. Ya Allah, you'll never be obeyed except by your permission. Even us being here tonight, brothers and sisters, obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, having the desire of our hearts, this is by the permission of God. To allow us to be who we are, to give and to live, to thrive, and to do the good things. It's not a homage to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we can pray. It's a gift from Allah to allow us to be good. He says, لَن تُطَاعَ إِلَّا بِإِذْنِكَ, that you will never be obeyed, Ya Allah, except by your permission. وَلَمْ تُعْصَى إِلَّا بِعِلْمِكَ, you will never be disobeyed except by your knowledge. تُطَاعَ بِفَتَشْكُرْ, that when you're obeyed, you're thankful to us as if we did anything for you. تُطَاعَ بِفَتَشْكُرْ وَتُعْصَى فَتَغْفِرْ, and we disobey you and you forgive us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who gives and gives and gives. Brothers and sisters, there's one dua that I'm going to leave you with. That I love this community. I feel when coming back and seeing the streets and seeing the development and flying over the city and seeing how Winnipeg has grown and looking at the Hazel restaurant and seeing all these wonderful, beautiful faces, old and new, friends, family, and so on. I don't know what life has in store for all of us. But the dua of our Prophet, which he informed Fatima, his daughter, to say, he said, Ya Hayyu Ya Qayyum, that, oh Allah, it's by your mercy that I beseech your mercy. I can't even ask you properly. Ya Hayyu Ya Qayyum, the living, the self-subsisting. Ya Hayyu Ya Qayyum, bi rahmatika astaghith. Aslih li sha'ni kullihi, that rectify all of my deeds. Aslih li sha'ni kullihi, wa la takilni ila nafsi tarfata ayn. Don't leave me to myself, even for the blink of an eye. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to bless this beautiful community and continue to grow all of us in our deen and our faith and our ability to do good. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم وجزاكم الله خيرا.